So never before has this hat been more appropriate for a video. So if you're someone who's a fan of BL, first of all, happy Fujoshi February, better late than never. But you have probably, at some point or another, let me try to stay in frame, I'm not really about this vlogging life, but at one point or another, you have probably heard of the BL Manhwa Killing Stalking. Now, I personally have avoided making any sort of video on Killing Stalking. I have avoided reading it altogether, mostly because it's just thematically, it's not for me. I'm not a fan of gore, I'm not a fan of horror, I'm not a fan of thriller, I'm not attracted to either of the main characters. So basically, I've avoided reading it and making a video on the topic for years. Until now. I'll go more into why I finally decided to cave and read Killing Stalking and make a video on it later in the video. What I'm going to do, new year, new me, I'm gonna vlog my reactions to reading it chapter by chapter, but as I read Killing Stalking, I'm going to vlog and share my thoughts in this video, and then I'll give my ultimate final thoughts at the end in probably a scripted format. I do know some spoilers of the series, I will say, so I won't say them, I won't spoil anyone else. Also, like, it's 2023, and I'm sick of people being stupid, so let's just be blunt and clear from the jump. This is a video about Killing Stalking, so if you have a problem with Killing Stalking, don't watch the video. If you're someone who is like, I'm triggered by whatever themes are present in Killing Stalking, clearly you're not triggered if you clicked on a video about Killing Stalking and you know that Killing Stalking has the triggers that trigger you. Let's just be clear, trigger warning, content warning, life warning. This is a video about Killing Stalking. If you couldn't see from the title and the thumbnail and me talking about Killing Stalking like 5 minutes into this recording right now. So, just finished chapter 2, and I'm back, and I'm changed into something a little more UwU, because woo-woo, this is a lot. I don't know if I said this already, but my overall, like, expectations going into this is, like, I'm expecting to be both overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. Underwhelmed because everything that I've ever encountered when it comes to fictional media, or anything in general, really, that's, like, as hyped up or, like, complained about being as terrible as it is, usually is not as terrible ultimately, but at the same time, like I said, I'm not a fan of gore, not a fan of brutality, not a fan of violence, horror, thriller, f***ed up shit. I'm not against any of those things, it's just not my personal taste. So far, what I'm gathering is that Yoon Bum kind of did this to himself. Not to blame the victim, but I mean, I didn't get to Google, what is it, borderline personality disorder? I don't know what that specifically entails, and I'm sure it's part of why he does what he does, but he still trespassed. And I high-key feel like ultimately, this is gonna feel like a huge, like, anti-trespassing PSA. Yoon Bum is Yoon Bum. I don't really have an opinion about him. I don't think he even has an opinion about him. Sangwoo, I'm starting to see the moe of Sangwoo. I'm not really fully on board. I've never been fully on board. I don't love the haircut. I am hoping it doesn't get more brutal than it already has, but I expect it probably will. So we're on the floor in solidarity with Yoon Bum. Woo! So Yoon Bum has his bum on the floor, but now I kind of see, like, okay, Sangwoo, Sangwoo? Is it Sangwoo? Sangwoo is getting a little Sang-UwU to me, because, like, first of all, the body is nice, and I am but a man, I am weak. I don't know, it's kind of funny to me. I just finished chapter 4. I'm about to start chapter 5. Ended on a cliffhanger, but I had to check in. I had to check in. Sangwoo is, like, in the know, and, like, I have to respect it. I cannot respect the, like, in the know, like, he can tell what's going on. The, like, no, you eat it first. Like, you know what? Like, I get it. Like, I get the appeal. We'll see if it sticks. Because he very clearly has mommy issues. They haven't f***ed yet. I thought that some sort of sex with somebody would have happened sooner. Yo, I can't. I just finished, literally a chapter has gone by. I just finished chapter 5. Yo, and f***ing Sangwoo blushed. See, I think I forgot to say this in a previous vlog, but like, this f***er loves him. Oh, you know, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of unironically on board. I'm kind of unironically on board. This shit, first of all, is funny because it's so fucking ridiculous. Like, it's so fucking ridiculous. Because again, I've been told it's called Killing Stalking. Killing me softly with his song. Apparently playing in the background the whole fucking time. Shout out the Fugees or whoever sang the original. I feel it's gonna tank. I'm already on the floor. I don't know where I'm gonna go from here. You know, it's I'm so canceled. But it's kind of romantic. Like, I cannot lie to you. So, I feel like there's going to be some sort of reveal about the mommy issues, because I highly doubt that Sangwoo is killing these women without some sort of mommy, like, some sort of issue relating to his mother. Like, I don't know if it's gonna be like something later happened when we learn more about his past with his parents, where his mother was either abusive or she did something wrong in his eyes and that forever triggered him to be a psychopath. But it's either that or it's like killing women is how he feels close to his mother. I'm going to assume that like the father killed the mother and he killed the father is what I'm going to assume. I don't know if I at this point believe that he killed both of them, but maybe he killed both. Again, I'm only in chapter 5. All right, so we're back up. Because Yoon Bum got to sit at the table. What to say. So I just finished chapter 8. They're about to have a threesome. I wouldn't say I'm a Sangwoo simp. 'Cause we're living this life. But I understand the appeal. You know what I mean? There are a lot of people who find Sangwoo hot. There's also a lot of people in real life who found Jeffrey Dahmer hot. But I mean, two completely different things. All I'm saying is heinous shit attracts people with taste. Just kidding. Yeah, I think there's like a common misconception around like people being attracted to villains or like villainous characters in fiction, because I feel like oftentimes there comes to be this like assumption that like, oh, I think, who's the villain? I think the Joker is hot. And I feel like when people hear someone say, I think the Joker is hot, that they assume that the person who has said that is like, he's done nothing wrong. And so you're excusing what he did. And it's like, no. Nobody's excusing what they did. I mean, maybe some people are, but I don't think most of us who find certain villains attractive are like, oh, he did nothing wrong. I mean, I'll say that in jest about villain characters that I'm attracted to. Finding Sangwoo hot has nothing to do with like whether he's in the right or in the wrong. We're not excusing what they've done. What they've done is they're attractive. Just kidding. Like, these are two different things. Like, these are apples and oranges. Like, we can acknowledge that like a fictional character is doing a fictional crime, but they're also hot. Like, these things can be mutual. These things can exist at the same time. Like, people don't understand that, like, these dichotomies can be simultaneously true. They think it's like, oh, you think they're hot, so you think they're a hero, so you think everything they're doing is right and correct, and you agree with it. I don't agree with what Sangwoo is doing. Not at all! But I would be lying. I'm not trying to get the Sangwoo whoa! So Sangwoo said, so you want to play a game? He had the gay man brought to his house. I thought they were gonna have a threesome. Clearly, I'm reading the wrong series. The thing with Sangwoo that I'm noticing is that like, I feel like he punishes other people as a way of punishing himself, if that makes sense. Like, it all feels like he does everything he does as a way of lashing out instead of lashing out at himself. Like, I think, like, the dichotomy the story is trying to tell to be fake deep is that, like, Bum is the type of person who, when he does something wrong, he hurts himself, but when Sangwoo does something wrong, he hurts other people. Like, when they feel, like, inner turmoil, it's like one keeps it internally, and the other externally expresses it. The duality of man, or some shit. Other than that, like, the detective is here, the attractive detective or cop or whatever is here, and he's on it, breaking all the laws. Now the series feels like propaganda as well. Like, see, you should let cops break into your house because someone might be kidnapping some skinny Korean boy. Oh, finally, Bum knows where he stands. So I feel like I know where I stand on Bum, and I stand on Bum. Just kidding. Right now, Bum is in the middle of some college party because Sangwoo can apparently sing. Singwoo. Yeah, so Bum is trapped at this festival where Singwoo is singing, but Bum is like, oh, I don't love him, but we know that's not true. Him being like, oh, I don't love him, like, I think he's just confused because he looks at the reality of the scenario, but he's also, like, acknowledging, like, he still does still attracted to him. But yeah, at this point, like, I don't like or dislike Yoon Bum, but I at least, like, acknowledge him as a character, because before it was just kind of like, you don't know where you stand, so I don't know where I stand with you or on you. Now it's like Yoon Bum is like addressing, like, do I have a thing for him still? Do I not? And I think ultimately it's gonna be not, like, from what I understand of the story. So I feel like so basically what's just happened is the epilogue of the singing thing. This girl, Joongi or whatever her name is, I knew I wasn't gonna like her. She just made herself unlikable, and just watching her dig her own grave was just like, just stop already, like, just please, like, oh no, like, it's just like that sense of dread. You see when you know it's gonna happen. But she's dead. Bum killed her because Sangwoo brought her home, was f***ing her in front of Bum, and then was like, oh, Bum's watching. Then brought her to the basement. Bum got triggered, and we got the backstory of the girl that Bum was stalking. I think it's doing a competent and thorough job of trying to portray the illness that Bum suffers from. It does a good job of, like, showing you that Bum is not in control, which is the point. Like, the name drop of him having BPD is to, like, bring you in and be like, he has this thing, so it's why he is. It could be a fake mental illness, you know what I mean? But I think the author intended to, like, use something real as a connection, maybe use that as the inspiration. Maybe they know someone with BPD in real life and that's the inspiration, or they're just familiar with mental illness, and maybe they're not familiar with it at all. They know it, like, very surface level, but they wanted to tell a story and have a character characterized with a certain type of mental health and mental capability. And I think they're doing a good job of showing that. Because it's not, again, it's not about, like, oh, is this accurate? Is this proper representation for people with BPD? Like, it ultimately is not about that. It's about, like, are you able to understand why the character is the way they are because they have this thing that is causing them to be how they are. And I think it's doing a good job of that. Basically, what I'm saying is don't go into Killing Stalking or any other shit where they mention a mental illness and being like, oh, so, like, I'm learning, now I'm a genius about BPD. No, you're not. No, you're not. But, like, again, Sangwoo. Y'all know I love Idol 7. Shout out Idol 7. One day I will do a video on Idol 7. I just need to figure out how I want to do it. One of my faves in Idol 7 is controversially is Ryo Tsukumo, who is very much like mustache twirling, like evil. Like, I love them like evil. It's just attracted to me with fictional characters. There's like a trolly aspect, like there's a comedic aspect to it, and like Sangwoo has like similar energy with like him fake flirting with her, but like you can tell he has like the evil eyes, like with his eyes closed, but you can see the shadows above them, like every time he's about to do like something like crazy. Seeing that is just like I love that shit so much. It's so entertaining to me, and it's like mildly attractive, depending on the character, so it works here. So there's that. Again, underwhelmed and over. Actually, I would say I'm consistently, again, I'm enjoying this, surprisingly. We'll see how it goes. But I think this is overhyped in like all aspects of it. I would say I'm cumulatively underwhelmed, even though I am enjoying it. Not underwhelmed as in I'm not, like, from a lack of let me lay down. This, how do vloggers do this? I thought I would be underwhelmed in terms of, like, how, like, shock value everybody made the series out to be. Like, I thought I would be underwhelmed in that because people usually are freaking out more. So, like, people literally, like, Adam from SK8, right? People will go on Twitter and type his name as 4D4M. And it's like, we're talking about the hot flamenco skateboard man. Like, what is y'all's problem? What is people's issue with this? Because now at this point, it's Bonnie and Clyde. Like, I don't understand why this is as controversial as it is. Because it really is not that deep. And we will do something later in this video highlighting why it is not that deep. So gonna end day one. First, I'm gonna start with the end of season 1 epilogue special chapters. Literally, this Q&A was like 99% of it was people asking what other do you read? First notable one, At the End of the Road. Makes sense. Makes a whole lot of sense. Blood Bank, which makes sense not because I know anything about Blood Bank, but because the big three BL Korean Manhwa that's been recommended to me over the years has been like Killing Stalking, Blood Bank, and BJ Alex. And depending on how this video does, maybe I'll cover the other two. It's 2023. Who knows knows what's gonna happen on this channel. One that surprised me, but also like impeccable taste. Sleeping with the Ghost, aka Ghost Love, one of my all-time favorite manhwa, criminally left behind. Because the artist for it, like, just up and stopped. Kyo Balhan, I think that was his name. If you're listening, if you're watching this video, come back. You ended season 1 on a cliffhanger. We want season 2. Also, because, like, some of the hottest male character designs I've ever seen in all drawn media. Like, up there with Icho is what I'm saying. Like, just delicious. Someone said that they seem to be well researched on BPD. They said they didn't really do much research on BPD, to be honest. Which I think is, like, good to be honest about, because again, it comes back to what I was saying about it's not about having it be accurate. Like, it's about, like, it's a plot device, and, like, people should be cognizant enough that, like, when you're going into fiction, like, this is not a source of education. And just because Bum's out here can't make up his mind if he loves the guy who kidnapped him or not, that he was in love with beforehand, whose house he trespassed in. I will never get over that. I will never get over that. I really went into this thinking like Bum was just out on the road and got kidnapped. No! Bum did set himself up. The enemy is within. I'm not having any negative connotations towards mental health. That might be just because I already don't have them in the first place. But you would think people would be cognizant enough to be reading something. You should be at least be 18 years of age if you're reading this in the first place. So you should be developed enough to understand these things, and to detach fiction from reality. But as we know in this business, that never fucking happens. I was gonna put like a disclaimer at the beginning of this, but I'm gonna address this because this is like one of the most annoying things about discussions around killing stalking online. Is killing stalking a BL? Like, if something is BL, who determines it is whoever is publishing it. Like, it ultimately comes down to whether something is BL or not is not like picking out like themes or tropes and thinking like, okay, because this, and this are in it, then it's BL. BL is also not the Japanese word for gay. You can have same-sex relationships between men and have it not be BL. What I'm saying all this to say is, like, people have argued and debated whether killing stalking is BL for years. Mostly because, like, there's this idea that BL has to have a happy ending. Because of the nature of Yoon Bum and Sangwoo's relationship, people think because of that this somehow makes it not BL, or because there's, like, a horror aspect to it makes it not BL. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if the publisher says it's BL, then it's BL. And even beyond that, there's been this, like, conspiracy theory that I know now is a conspiracy theory that people have said that, like, oh, the author of Killing Stalking has said that their work is not BL in some interview that nobody can ever reference or have a link to or a video of. Yet in this interview, and maybe that's in a later interview, and I'll find out by the time I finish this, but in this interview, which was published through Lezen, they acknowledge it as being BL. They say it's not so much a, like, straightforward, strict BL. They say it's in more of a grayish area, but that does not mean it is not BL. Like, shades of gray does not mean that something is not the thing. Like, they're just saying it's not, like, it's not like other BL. it's its own, like, it's not its own thing, but it's not what you would typically expect is what they're clearly trying to get across, is what it came to me in the interview. But they acknowledged it as BL regardless. Someone was asking about, like, the LGBT community. They, like, kind of said they're like, yeah, like, there's, like, homosexual, like, tones, but it's not fully, which I thought was interesting, because I know a lot of people complain about, like, BL not being, like, accurate queer representation, and it's, like, a lot of times it's not trying to be, so it's, like, I don't know why you would assume that it would be that or that it has to be that. But y'all have heard me talk about this for years. I don't know, people have this weird idea that because it's so heinous story-wise and, like, in terms of the themes that, oh, it can't be BL, and it's, like, why does BL always have to be, like, I honestly would welcome more BL with unhappy endings, because that's, like, Western queer cinema 101. You ever seen Brokeback Mountain? You ever seen Geography Club? Things of note. The detective is sexy. He had, like, a shirt-changing scene. I need him to, like, open up. He needs to open up, because now he's in the Rainbow sector, and he's, like, doing research there, and I need him to, like, be solicited and be complicit in the solicitation. You know what I'm saying? He needs to open up a bit. So let them on in. Not all at once, or maybe all at once. It's up to his preference, but go slow. The last thing I have to say is that I think Bum actually truly really is the villain in this story, because he was doing that, like, chin strap face mask shit. So he's canceled. Just kidding. So basically, I slept on Killing Stalking in all ways. I went to bed last night after reading up to chapter 27. Like I said before, like Killing Stalking ultimately has been underwhelming for me. Like there's horrific shit. Like I'm not denying that, but it's not as brutal and fucked up as I thought it was gonna be. I've definitely read more fucked up shit that depicts men in relationships with other men by gay men. Just saying. And I've thoroughly enjoyed those as well. So I'm just, I like this has been, like I said, in terms of like how much of like a meme it was and how shocking it was, overall underwhelmed. And I continue to be so. It's so weird to me that there's still so much left. Like I said, like I'm at chapter 35 is what I just finished. I know ultimately where we're gonna have to go. Like Sangwoo is ultimately gonna be exposed, probably, I assume, and Bum will probably be free. I'm assuming that's the general direction we're going. I don't think this is like they ride off into the sunset together. That's generally the vibe I get from people complaining again about Killing Stalking not being BL. Speaking of BL, one hilarious aspect about this is when Bum was being interrogated by Yang or whatever, trying to get him to confess to like what Sangwoo has been doing, Bum was then thinking about, oh, like they're trying to get me to confess about killing the girl or whatever. And like that's hilarious to me. Because like it's like a massive obvious misunderstanding that could very well be cleared up, and that's just so BL of the series, because that's like BL to the T. Like someone thinking somebody's boyfriend, or some like unclear aspect about the relationship, and then it turns into a 3-episode thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's just so BL. So to see like more misunderstanding, although albeit in a different context, in a different scenario, is just hilarious to see in this as well. One really good line. He's so evil. Y'all know I love them evil. When he's like, when they're having sex outside and Bum's like, oh, please, let's go inside. Sangwoo's like, I am inside. No! It's kind of hot seeing Sangwoo on the ropes. Like, seeing Sangwoo in a stressful situation where he could be exposed is kind of hot. Especially because he starts to get a little kind of bratty, but kind of like spoiled bratty. The like one moment where I was like, stop it. It's like he calls, when he's like internal monologuing, which I think is the first time he's done this in the series, like when they're given the sheets of paper and they're like filling it out, he like calls, this is a weakness of mine, he calls Bum dummy. Y'all know I love Taiga Akatora from Camp Buddy. It's my favorite love interest from the original game. And every time he calls us dummy, I pitter patter. I love that shit. One more thing I also forgot to mention, Bum's uncle's back in the picture. Jesus. Jesus, good God. It was nice to see Bum stand up for himself for like half a second. I feel like the uncle might show up and tell Sangwoo like, hey, that's my nephew, like you have to give him to me. But now that Sangwoo knows what the uncle did to Bum, I feel like there's also gonna be like a chance for him to get kidnapped and chopped up. His initial reaction when he learned about Bum being by his uncle, he was like, oh, disgusting, like you dirty or whatever. And so in Sangwoo's mind, there's going to be an element of him viewing the uncle as like a rival in love or something, because he's up like that. So I feel like he'll want to get rid of the uncle because it's like getting rid of competition. Oh, Sangwoo. So I just finished chapter 40, which was the flashback, like basically introducing us to Sangwoo's relationship with his mother. And I'm getting this sneaking suspicion that we're going to get a special guest appearance from Oedipus himself. And honestly, like, I felt like this for a while now. I'm getting the general vibe that Sangwoo is trying to purposely push Bum away. When they were on the roller coaster, like, Bum couldn't hear him, but he was saying something like, oh, don't trust me, it'll only hurt you. And so, like, it's very clear that, like, he's just gonna try to push Bum as much as he can to push Bum away because he actually loves Bum, but, like, he wants to push Bum away to get to a point where they irreparably cannot be together in his mind due to Bum not reciprocating his feelings. So then that will give him an excuse to kill Bum finally and be over the situation. Because I think this is all making Sangwoo uncomfortable. Not only because of, I don't think him ever being in love before, I would assume, but also because of the association with his mother that we have to delve into because... what was going on there? Is gonna hit the fan. I'm just waiting for it to. Is gonna hit the fan, or Sangwoo is gonna hit Bum with a fan. Probably the latter, but it's just, the uncle keeps getting brought up. When they were in the bathtub, he was like, oh, what about this? What about that? Like, oh, have you even been drinking? He's like, yeah, I drank once with my uncle. And he's like, and he like tossed his legs back. He's like, oh, your uncle Everything is such a diva moment. I'd personally at this point argue that Sangwoo is more into Bum than Bum is into Sangwoo. Because Bum has always had like an obsession, obsessed over Sangwoo, but I feel like Bum's attraction to Sangwoo is not as much of a romantic attraction as it is an obsession, and maybe potentially just like related to his obsessive behaviors as someone with BPD. And I think there is definitely a level of attraction, but I do not think it is the same. If I was like, I'm in love with Beyonce, but I don't know Beyonce. I've never met Beyonce. I only know her. And like, even if I started getting to know Beyonce, Jay-Z would say no. No, but like I wouldn't, like, it's coming from like a fan perspective. It's coming from an admiration. Like, it's not something that is like the normal, natural process of falling in love with someone. So I don't think Bum is as in love with Sangwoo as Sangwoo is with Bum, because Sangwoo literally brought him in and then like gradually has been falling for him. And like, he has an obsessive relationship like with his attraction to Bum to a degree, I would say, but I think his attraction is much more genuine because this is just some random guy who trespassed in his house that he hobbled. So things are going. I'm waiting for Oedipus to pop up. Oedipus Complex pop-up shop coming to Killing Stalking. So probably the hardest thing about this whole vlogging, aside from the fact that I have to hold on to my iPhone like single-handedly for 20 minutes at a time, is that I keep getting entranced in the story. So I'm like, and we find out Detective Yang is a mess, and probably unemployed, living alone, and there's a saleswoman who keeps trying to give him food because she's trying to get at him. She's like, I can fix him. She's not doing so well, though. She doesn't stand a chance. Because Detective Yang's boyfriend, his senpai, Detective Lee, I think it's Detective Lee, has shown up and said he's going to help him, I assume, try to figure out what's going on with Sangwoo, because he trusted him before. So I actually had, like, going into it, I had, like, an inkling in my mind. I was like, you know, imagine they don't kill the uncle in this. Like, it would just be very fascinating to see if, like, the uncle didn't get killed in this, but apparently that's not the case because the uncle is dead. Yeah, no, the most interesting part of that is, like, Bum's exploration of, like, a victim of abuse still having good memories with their abuser. But yeah, Sangwoo cried and admitted that he likes girls with a strong motherly instinct, so Oedipus should be coming in right about now. But the fact that he cried was like, oh, Sangwoo. But I've been feeling that way about Sangwoo for a while now. Like, I empathize with people in general, like, because nothing comes from nowhere. Like, everything comes from something. Like, someone lashing out at the world is coming from somewhere. Like, there are just so many, like, cumulative different human factors and, like, situations that can cause you to be how you are, regardless of you being a good person or you being like a raging serial killer who's smoking hot. It's just interesting to finally see him like actually break down, because I feel like Sangwoo has been like teetering on the edge for a while now, ever since he started really being attracted to Bum. Because now, like, the correlation between Bum and his mother is, like, as strong as ever. And the crying thing was just very interesting, because that's not something I feel like I ever thought that Sangwoo would do. But it shows that, like, we really need to explore what his relationship, his allegedly incestuous relationship with his mother was. Hurt people. We've known this. So it'll be interesting to see how many more people he hurts. So I had intended to keep going, but it's jumping around again. We just got done learning the backstory of Sangwoo's mother and that whole situation. Also, Sangwoo has simultaneously become both less hot and more hot in the past few chapters, because now he's like Junta Azumaya cosplaying. That's what his haircut is giving me. I prefer it when it was fluffy. But on the bright side, we've been getting flashback Sangwoo. Oh, other note, I'm probably still gonna fuck this up regardless. So out of morbid curiosity, I decided to look up how the you pronounce these names. I've been pronouncing Bum correctly, but apparently it is, was it Sangwoo? Apparently it's Sangwoo, not Sangwoo. But I mean, what do you expect from me at this point? I tried, but a lot of times I fail. I don't think it's O. The Tumblr post says ooh, so I'm gonna assume ooh, so it's Sangwoo. So the W is silent, like the G in lasagna. So we've been getting flashback Sangwoo, who, in my opinion, is the best look he has, because it's the dark hair all the way around, it's fluffy, and he's adorable. Part of me, I was looking up out of morbid curiosity as well to see if Koogi, the author of this, has done anything else since. Apparently they haven't. If they're taking requests, can we get like Happy AU Sangwoo? Like, For real? Because he was so cute and adorable and a victim of terrible abuse at the hands of his mother. So basically, the timeline, I guess, of the family is that at some point before the mother and the father got married, they were a happy couple. Then they had Sangwoo, and I'm going to assume that the mother had postpartum depression. And so she then tried to kill Sangwoo at some point, tried to smother him when he was but a wee child. With his pillow. The father intervened, and I feel like that was where, like, the marriage really started to fall apart, because then later, we know that the father grew up to be, an alcoholic and, like, abused the mother. We already knew about that. But it also turns out that the mother was having an affair with some random faceless guy who was hot from a distance. So good for her. But Sangwoo accidentally heard about that shit, and it seems like the mother was not the happy, supportive woman that she has been portrayed so far. She had clearly lost it. We learned that, like, she, like, knew that he knew that she was having an affair because he was sick one time and, like, stayed after and da-da-da. And so then the father would abuse the mother, and he just kind of went about life. And so at one point, he, like, tried to stop when he's, like, I think in high school, he tried to stop his father from beating his mother. And so in doing so, the father died, and the mother was like, oh my God, you killed him, don't worry, I won't tell anyone. And so they brought him up to where we know the father was buried, and they hung the father on a fake news, so I guess they faked his suicide, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure they said it was a murder in the beginning, but we're not gonna worry about details, it doesn't matter. And so, as time goes by, she starts to call Sangwoo, babe and shit. Oedipus is lurking behind curtain number 1, and so... starts calling him babe randomly because she's like, you look so much like your dad, and she acts like she misses the father. But then, like, Sangwoo starts to get sick himself, and that's when he realizes that, like, when his father died, there was, like, rat poison near him, and so he deduces that, like, his mother has been poisoning him with rat poison in the food. So she probably killed the father probably died rat poisoning himself, and then she is now trying to kill her son that she claims to love. So we can see why he is as up as he is. I'm going to assume after the end of that last flashback that he is going to kill her. Probably, like, her remains are probably buried in the house or something. We also had the iconic "I'm not gay" line. Which, I mean, listen, he's not wrong, however he wants to interpret it, but also, like, labels, like, who cares? That whole situation was interesting because he basically, like, said to Bum, oh, if you were a girl, though, like, you wouldn't be here anymore. Which is, of course, clearly related to the mother trauma. So that was interesting. So they're crumbling. Like they are crumbling. Like, and everything is falling apart. TLDR. Sangwoo called Bum mom while they were having sex. No! And things were already crumbling before that. You could tell that Sangwoo is, like, falling apart. Like, he is having a mental breakdown. This is a long time coming. And this next chapter has a warning about graphic content. So, figured I might as well get this out before I get traumatized. Things have just been falling apart. And, like, the falling apart is also what's romantic to me. The way they're crumbling, the way everything is just coming to an end. But yeah, and now Sangwoo is, like, crying a whole lot, and Bum clearly does not really want to be in this relationship anymore. Like he's definitely not as connected to Sangwoo as he has been previously, like, emotionally, or even obsessively. It seems like he almost feels like a coherent person at this point. It doesn't feel like he's subject to the episodes that he used to have as someone with BPD. Like, it doesn't seem like that is controlling him as much anymore, which is good for his mental state. But on the flip side, it's kind of funny to see that, like, now Sangwoo is falling apart, like, at the seams. The story is, like, implying that Bum took the rat poison, but I think it's a misdirect. I'm pretty sure, like, the missing rat poison is just, like, under the washing machine. Like, I'm pretty sure. And I think Sangwoo is just, like, deteriorating so quickly that, like, he's starting to make up. Like, oh, Sangwoo is an Aquarius. Could have seen that a mile away. Like, he very... the zodiac sign fits. I don't need to tell you how. You should already know. So I'm done. I don't know why I don't smoke. I don't know why I sound like a smoker through, like, half of this shit when I've been laughing, but here we are. So I'm done. Thoughts on the finale? I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. Where do I even begin with this? I have notes, and I'm like, I don't even know how to approach this. I'm just gonna go by my notes. And then I'm gonna go into something else. The Christmas episode with them meeting as babies, adorable. It warmed my heart. That's all I have to say about that. There's like so much to say and not a lot to say. I'll start with the epilogue questions because it's less heavy. This was something that was like, it seemed like back and forth, but also I feel like maybe is left up to interpretation. The ending itself is like mad ambiguous. Like I knew going into this that Sangwoo dies. Like I knew he died in the end, and I knew Bum survived, but that also is slightly left ambiguous and unanswered because Bum crosses the street as the light the walk signal turns red. There's like those like hinting moments leading up to that in the final few chapters where like he does run into the street before a taxi almost runs him over. So it almost implies that like that was like a forewarning of like what could have happened to Bum if he wasn't paying attention, and he wasn't paying attention in the end, so there's that. They also say Sangwoo never saw Bum for Bum. Like, he only saw him as, like, a proxy for his mother. They also say something along the lines of, like, because someone, I think, asked, like, if Sangwoo ever did romantically love Bum, and they said something along the lines of, like, oh, if you read the final chapter, you'd understand. And, like, the final chapter, again, a lot of it is hearsay, a lot of it is not confirmed, but it, like, seems to imply that if the grandmother's story about there was a celebrity staying in the hospital, and he kept saying Bum, and so she smothered him to shut him up. If that's true, if the grandmother's story is to be believed, then I think you could assume then yes. But other than that, I think if you don't believe it, then obviously the answer is no. But at the same time, like, is it even yes in that instance? Because if he always saw him as his mother, then he's like calling out to Bum. But at the same time, that wouldn't make sense because like if he's calling out to Bum specifically and not his mother, I don't know. I think a lot of this is a lot of mental gymnastics to get to the truth, I think. I do think ultimately like the author's saying that Sangwoo was never actually attracted to Bum. For whether I personally think that he actually loved him, I don't know. I'm gonna have to sleep on this. Like, I'm gonna need to give myself like 48 hours and write like a final conclusion script for this. Bum lying about like meeting Sangwoo and like, oh yeah, like that just annoyed me because it's like it shows like he still doesn't have he doesn't have remorse in all of this. Like he sort of felt guilty about killing the girl and then meeting her father or her mother. But then he lied about, like, the fact that he trespassed at Sangwoo's place in the first place. But I think maybe part of that is because he was thinking about protecting himself in a world where Sangwoo is still alive. So I think maybe that's why he was probably trying to hide his or save his ass. So, like, if Sangwoo goes to jail, then, like, he wouldn't be near him anymore. Sangwoo let go of the photo. That shit hurt. That hurt me. I was like, no, not the photo. He actually let go of it at that time. Although that's not necessarily confirmed. I think Bum just knows that the photo was gone or that they couldn't find it in the house. So, I mean, maybe he threw it out. Maybe he dropped it at the point of the roller coaster, or maybe he just threw it out later, like when he finally broke down completely. Who can tell? A lot of this is left ambiguous and like artistically like mysterious for you to just kind of like not make your own assumptions, but it's like, what is the truth? A lot of implied, like things are the truth from the implied actions, but it's like, what is the truth? Like it could be up to you. It could be the truth, or it could be not. But I'll have final thoughts later. The last thing I'm gonna do is I am going to watch Bible Black. To prove a point. I've seen Bible Black before. It's been quite some time. I think I skimmed through it before, but I'm actually going to sit through Bible Black and actually watch it. Because I feel like if we're gonna talk about a horrific BL story or a horrific story depicting same gender relations, I think it only especially with like how much outrage there is around Killing Stalking, I feel like it only makes sense to me and just how I am to actually like compare it to like a heterosexual counterpart. Because like Killing Stalking like and Bible Black are both very much like memes within anime fandom culture. But I would say like from my perspective, like people treat Killing Stalking like it's the devil, whereas people treat Bible Black like it's a joke. And I think there's a reason for that, but we will delve into that after I've seen Bible Black. Because again, ultimately, like now having finished Killing Stalking, like it was not as traumatizing for me personally as I thought it was going to be. Like, people made this shit seem like it was like Chapter Black from Yu Yu Hakusho, if you understand that reference. As of right now in this moment, I would give it an 8.5 out of 5. Or 8.5 out of 10. Or maybe 8.5 out of 5. Exceptional. So I'm going to go watch Bible Black, and I will check in after I've read that.
Okay, so this is now the unintentional ASMR section of this video. I've only watched like 3 episodes, but I don't really need to see more than this. The 3 episodes have shown me what the fuck I need to see. Do y'all want to see me speak? Should I do this or this? This is all new to me. This is a very experimental video. I have seen Bible Black before. I have skimmed through it for the sex scenes, which, let me say, I appreciate Taki. I think his name is Taki. He's the main guy. He's problematic by like general standards, but we'll dig into that. We will dig into that. But he's hot, so we forgive him. Just kidding. This seems to be the theme of this video, but I mean, so that was kind of lewd. If you know, you know, that was kind of lewd. You know what? First, let's go over what happened in these 3 episodes of Bible Black, transitioning from BL Black to Bible Black. I can't really do a ding. It's the middle of the night. I can't get out of hand. But anyway, episode 1. The first note I make: Minase is hot because he is. He has nice. Like I have said before, I'm going on a tangent, this is irrelevant to the video. In the first episode, we have a female teacher, dubcon kissing and seducing her student, and then the shit out of her on the hospital bed in, like, the infirmary. She also grabs her nipple and yanks it. I just wrote that. And then it turns out Minase, even though he is hot, he's using, like, magical demon charms to coerce people into controlling them and then having sex with other people. So that's going on. And then it turns out that the main boy, Minase, the hot guy who probably doesn't need these charms the the class president into confessing to him, and then they have sex in the gym. And so that's all in episode 1. Episode 2, I just want to mention this is not problematic, but I thought it was something of note because this is straight hentai. Minase is getting off by this girl. I forget her name. Is her name? No, I forget her name. I think her name was Saika or something. There's 2 blonde girls. I was very confused. There was 2 blonde anime girls, and I thought they were the same girl, but then I actually started paying attention. I was like, oh, these are different girls. But anyway, and so she starts him off, and then she puts a finger in his butthole, and I was like, holy shit, this is like a straight hentai from 2001. Like, there were fingering boys' buttholes and shit. Progressive, we stand. And so then he hits her afterwards because she's asking questions or something. So he hit a girl, so that's abuse. So checks off. Then the teacher dubcons another student. Minase goes home and he grabs his sister. He says sister. I looked it up. Apparently it's his cousin. Either way, incest is wincest. I mean, incest is incest. He grabs his female relative and then blames her for him her because she's not wearing a bra. And then the Futa teacher is out here forcing girls to be horny with magic, and then they're like, we're gonna rape you, and then they rape them. And then episode 3, which I don't remember if I finished episode 3, but at the end of episode 2 they kidnap this other teacher. They pump her with water from both ends, so they're shoving water with a tube down her throat, and then they're shoving water through a tube up her ass. And so she's looks like she's pregnant, and I was like, oh, is this teacher pregnant? Was I not paying attention? No, it's because she's filled with water to the brim. And then Minase goes and he her in the ass non-consensually, and she's like, no, don't come in me, there's already enough liquid in me. And then after he's done, the Futa teacher starts her too, and so then she bursts all the water out her ass. And that's all I really remember. But the point of all of me defining and labeling and describing all this graphic is to point out the simple fact that this shit is more heinous than Killing Stalking. And I feel like the big difference as to why Killing Stalking is seen as this problem story, as opposed to Bible Black being seen as a joke, nobody's writing hit pieces on Bible Black, people are doing that shit for yucks, is simply because I think the key difference is that the gender being harmed in Killing Stalking is a man, whereas the gender being harmed in Bible Black is a woman. So when women are harmed, it's a joke, but when men are being harmed, all of a sudden we have to suddenly take it seriously, especially when it's within a homosexual context. I have been a connoisseur of straight hentai for an incredibly long time, and Bible Black is not the exception. I don't know if it's the rule, but it's not the exception. Non-con within straight hentai is all over the place. You don't see people talking about all the eyes, all the romanticize, fetishize, what's the other one? Normalize, bankulize, shout out Mr. Easy. I think that's the second time I've made this reference in here, but that's my song from a long time ago. I'm just pointing out that the people who take fiction way too seriously and point out all this moral within fiction, they're hypocritical and they're homophobic because they're only going after the queer shit. They're never going after the straight shit. So that's why I subjected myself to Bible Black at 1 o'clock in the morning. And here I am doing ASMR in a video about Killing Stalking. Somehow we're talking about Bible Black, but I digress. Killing Stalking was fine. I enjoyed Killing Stalking. 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 out of 5, like I said. 8.5 out of 5.
As we go on, we remember. So Initially I said this is gonna be scripted. This will no longer be scripted. I actually filmed like 3 hours of me talking about this final thoughts yesterday in like a post-Killing Stalking haze, and I just feel like I rambled too much, so that's gonna go in the extended cut, which I'll talk about later. I just want to talk about this from a place of like enjoyment. I want to talk about this from a place of like, this is just how I feel about the thing. This is not how I feel about the thing and how I'm not justifying how I feel about it. I don't care. Who cares? So I just kind of want to talk about it more from a feeling place, less from an analytical. This is not a video essay. I am not a video essayist. This is a vlog, technically. A blog, if you will. A BLog. Or 2 L's. We'll worry about the marketing in the for that later. So let's start this off with why KrisPNatz, why in the year of 2023, 7 years after Killing Stalking first started publishing, and 4 years after Killing Stalking ended, why are you finally now, after years of being against doing a video on Killing Stalking and refusing to pick up Killing Stalking, why now did you decide to do a Killing Stalking video? Obviously, I haven't made content in like 3 months, and so I did want to kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to come back with a bang. Ultimately, y'all saw it in my 10 count, I think it was my 10 count video, I talked about how like the state of BL and BL discourse has been veering towards like this idea that the only way to have proper representation for queer characters, same gender male relationships, has to be this like heartstopper, sasamiya, like puritan, like UwU, like super cute, like free of sex, everything is healthy and happy. Like this is the only like accurate queer representation, and it's also the only like, it's not fetishization and like all the stupid that we've always heard about. So like out of spite, I was like, you know what, maybe I should give Killing Stalking a try, because it's like, I'm sick of these puritan and homophobic conceptions about what queer representation has to be. These are people who usually are like concerned about representation, but these same people only really want a singular kind of representation. Like this is a story displaying like a f***ed up, toxic, abusive relationship. And like, there are countless examples of that within media depicting straight people. And like, if you're talking about representation, representation is about underrepresented groups being able to have their stories and their lives and their identity displayed within fiction in ways that the majority or the oppressor already is able and capable to do. So you can't be like, oh, I want representation, and then be like, oh, Killing Stalking is bad for queer identity because it shows a f***ed up toxic relation. Like, there are f***ed up abusive queer relationships, and we should be able to have stories about those kinds of relationships. And like, yes, those relationships are bad. I think a lot of the discussion about like people saying like, oh, this is romanticizing abuse, like first of all, oversimplifies abuse and like what abusive relationships are, because yes, there is abuse in relationships and the abuse is the problem, but the abuse is part of a relationship. Unfortunately, a lot of the times these people are doing the abuse out of an act of love. Doesn't justify it. It's fucked up. You shouldn't be doing it. But it's not like an abusive relationship is not a relationship that has romance within it. And I feel like that's a misconception, and people just kind of like to just shut down conversations or say, oh, this is bad because of this one-liner, whatever the one of the eyes is or some And I feel like that just, again, shuts down the fact that like, regardless of what gender or identity the person who made this story is, like, these stories should be able to exist because, again, trillions of straight counterparts to them that already exist. So to kind of shut down, like, and put in a box what kind of stories can be told around same-gender relationships is, again, it's homophobic in my opinion, because you're not allowing that identity to have as many participating options within fictional options as, again, straight people do. Killing Stalking does very much remind me of, like, an I know Kusabi. I've called it Kusabi for so many years. I'm pretty sure it's the wrong pronunciation. But, like, Killing Stalking very much reminds me of an I know Kusabi, and I don't really see people complain about I know Kusabi in the same way they complain about Killing Stalking. But I feel like there are a lot of similar themes that has a very similar ending, I would say. And the last thing I just kind of want to say, again, is, like, if we're talking about diversity and representation and, like, enjoying a toxic love story, I don't really like the word toxic, but I use it because it's an accessible term for people to recognize. I recommend people reading or watching Keep the Lights On. It's a gay love story. I believe it might be based on a true story about two men navigating their relationship within New York and the issues with like drug use and stuff like that. It's incredibly depressing. But that's what makes it so great. It's another example of, like, again, a f***ed up relationship that is depicting men of the same gender. And like, it's again, like, this is not a concept that does not exist. But again, this idea that Killing Stalking is, it's not BL, it's not romance, the relationship is not romantic because there's abuse involved. Like, just because there's abuse in a relationship can still be viewed as romantic and still contain abuse. Like, I viewed this personally. I thoroughly enjoyed the romance of the two leads. And like, you can have your opinions about that, I don't care. But I did not enjoy like any abuse between the two of them. Like, oh, I don't love that this is happening to Bum, but I do love the relationship that is occurring between the two of them. I feel like part of the reason why people want to lean into like Heartstopper and Sasaki to Miyano and Given, mind you, which are all stories that people will point to as accurate queer representation for BL that are all written by people who are not queer men. Yet these are the same people who will scream fetishization when it's like BL that involves sex that's written by a woman, but at the same time will not engage with men's love manga because they view it as just porn, even though there is stories with most of them, and usually they have like some sort of body issue with not liking bulky, hairy, or fat men. But I digress. But like, at the end of the day, like, I feel like part of it is part of this like general idea within queer communities or people who can claim to be allies. Also, first of all, if you're a straight person talking about like, oh, BL toxic, blah, blah, shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And second of all, this idea of like Sasaki to Miyano and Heartstopper are good examples of representation for queer people. I feel like a lot of it stems from this idea of like, oh, if we have more stories depicting queer relationships like this, then it will convince straight people to accept us more. And I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen. Tolerance and acceptance are not the same thing. Tolerance is when you bow down to someone to like present something to them in a way that they will accept, aka removing queer sex because it makes them uncomfortable, even though the rest of us have to watch straight sex. And listen, I enjoy watching straight sex as a bi boy, and there are plenty of queer people, monosexual queer people, who enjoy watching straight sex as well, but we don't need to dive into that. But first of all, if you're like, okay, let's get rid of the queer sex so that straight people can pay better attention, that's tolerance, that's not acceptance. If we're going to this idea of like, okay, let's only show happy, healthy relationships so that they won't have an excuse to point to us as being abusive or whatever other their propaganda talking points are for homophobia. I'm sorry, but like, if the only queer media that existed was like Sasaki to Miyano, like everything was a copy and paste of Sasaki to Miyano, I assure you that homophobes would find a reason to point it out as being morally objective, and they would find a reason to continue to point to us as other. All the talking points, they would still exist and they would not change. So you shouldn't be trying to make sure that straight people will like them. Straight people have to make up their own mind about whether they accept us or not. Like, that's not our job. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. That all ties into like why I did this. It's again, same thing I always do it for. Puritanism and homophobia and this idea of being performatively like, this is what queerness should be so the straights will accept us. No. They can suck my dick, eat my ass, before I wipe. Anyway, first thing I want to kind of get out of the way, I know I used Bible Black as the example. I'm not stupid. It very much is not like the best one-to-one example. I think a closer example probably would have been Metamorphosis. Again, me bringing this up is just this idea of like, when it's women being harmed sexually, it's a joke, even no matter how f***ed up it is, because Metamorphosis is f***ed up if you've ever read Metamorphosis. But I think Metamorphosis would have been just a better one-to-one comparison because there's no magic involved, quite frankly. Because again, like, f***ed up shit within straight hentai has existed in perpetuum. Like, a lot of straight hentai is f***ed up. The point was just to make that, like, people who complain about Killing Stalking like it's the Antichrist don't have that same energy for Bible Black and Metamorphosis. And any other, like, f***ed up series where people are like, LOL, this is f***ed up. Overall thoughts, thoroughly enjoyed Killing Stalking. It was a ride. Like, the first time through was already a ride. Y'all saw me in the vlogs. I've seen the vlogs. I've edited the first part of this video at the time of recording this. And like, you just see me go from like, this is so fun. Like, it's Killing Stalking, yikes. And then go from like, just like clearly kind of losing it a little bit because of how much is going on in my brain processing, going to like just slump down on the side, just like, what the is going on? And that was the first time. Literally, the timeline was I read it on Saturday and Sunday last week. I said in that video, I think I was like, let me get like 48 hours to like process. First of all, it took a whole lot more than 48 hours. It took all week. And I was like, okay, I definitely want to reread this before I do my final thoughts. And then I kept pushing it off. I finished at 7:57 a.m. And I'm writing paragraphs of notes. So I'm reading it like, I might as well get this out the way now. So like, overall score, I would say at this point, I give it a 9.5 out of 10. I truly cannot give it a 10. Simply because of inconsistencies within the story. Usually inconsistencies within the story I very much forgive. As you saw with me talking in the vlogs, there was like different points that were made or put up. And again, I'm not unaware of what the working conditions for everybody who was publishing at Lezen was at the time that this was publishing. It was the height of like the issues at Lezen. So I'm not unaware of what could have prevented Koogi, if that's how it's pronounced, prevented her from telling the story and going back and having the time to tell the story and having the time to go back and remember what she said or drew or did. Like, there are minor things that I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I can forgive, like, the discussion around particularly Sangwoo's parents changing as the story goes. Like, it starts off as like, oh, both parents died and they were talking about a break-in, but they found the father with a noose around his neck in the mountains. So how does that relate to a break-in? And then it's ultimately revealed that, like, yeah, we never found a body for your mother, but we found a pool of blood, so we just ruled it as suicide. And it's like, yeah, police can be super incompetent like that sometimes in certain cases. But that also is just like, that doesn't make sense why Sangwoo wouldn't be seen as suspicious by the police force all this time later. Like, that would be a prime thing. So it's like, but I can forgive all that. Like, I can forgive all that. And then there are just inconsistencies in the story that it's like, I can't overlook. Particularly, this is spoilery obviously at this stage, the cut on Sangwoo's mother's neck, because it's shown in his flashback when she assaulted him that he was holding the knife, she pulled the knife into herself, but she had the cut vertically on her neck. Yet when we see the photos of the mother's corpse all this time later, you see that she has the same cut under the chin that he gave Bum earlier. And while in a vacuum, the cut under the chin makes sense with all the associations with Bum that we don't need to get into, you can read about it on my Patreon, that's not what happened. And it's like, I cannot figure that scene out because I cannot figure out if it means A, Koogi just up, forgot that in that moment when she had the scene killing the mother, like, oh shit, it was supposed to be a cut under the chin. Either she forgot and was like, whoops, and was like, but remember that she wanted to tie it back to Sangwoo, and again, crazy working conditions, couldn't remember all these things. Is it that? Is it that? Or is it like Sangwoo is now an unreliable narrator and like nothing is to be trusted, and so this is implying that actually she didn't kill herself to him? Is this implying the truth is that he killed her? But then what does that mean about his entire backstory as a child? And then does that change the little him calling her a wretch scene? Is that like hinting at him becoming a serial killer? And then it's like, okay, so did he kill his father and it wasn't an accident and he just views it as an accident? It's like, it's the one thing in this entire story really that I cannot reconcile with. And I try not to think about it too much. Obviously I'm ranting about it now, but like, because of like, I would say honestly, mostly because of that scene, just that kind of inconsistency, and there are other inconsistencies, but again, I don't want this to be like a nitpicky, like breaking down minute by minute everything that happened in Killing Stalking, whatever, was inconsistent. Like, I don't want to do that here. But that's just the one that's at the top of my mind. So ultimately, like I said, I do give it like a 9.5 out of 5. I mean, exceptional, like I said. But like I gave it like a 9.5 out of 10 because it's just thoroughly, like enjoyed it even more the second time, because when you see the foreshadowing, the parallels of like Bum after telling Sangwoo about his uncle and Sangwoo like being like, oh, you're disgusting. I forget what the exact words he says, but he says something about like, I won't be here anymore if you don't need me anymore or something like that. And then like later Sangwoo does say to him in like the final confrontation with Yang, it's Yang apparently, not Yang. I don't know if I've said that already. Mispronounced my entire way through this. It's Yang Gang, not Yang Kang. Sangwoo says, like, I don't need you anymore. Things like that were just amazing to me, fascinating to me. I think the story did an incredibly great job. Well, not great. Great doesn't mean anything. I think it did an incredibly competent and thorough, for the most part, job of displaying the mental state of its two main characters, Bum and Sangwoo, because it really did a good job of, like, explaining, like, where they're coming from, what their trauma is, why they are the way they are, whether you agree with how they are or not. Only other issue I would say, again, is what I call the gaps within the story. There are just certain time frames and time periods that are not explained or not shown, and I feel like they would make sense for character building, characterization, and just to explain what has happened in between. The two that I can think of off the top of my head is between Sangwoo being assaulted by his mother and her death, and then him starting to be a serial killer. We need I need the connective tissue, because it doesn't not make sense, but it's like, it would be nice to know the origins of him actually going out and killing people, because by the time his mother has been killed, he has not technically intentionally killed anybody. He's killed his father on accident by trying to get him away from his mother. I think that's what that scene implied. His mother has killed herself while he holds a knife, which is like he's an accessory to murder. He has participated in her murder, but he did not murder her. Like, he did not have killing intent. He was holding a knife in self-defense, and she impaled herself on it. He hasn't killed anyone with intention at this point. So at what point did he decide, okay, my next steps as a human being after both of my parents dying is that I'm going to start killing people, killing women, particularly to have the simulation to get catharsis for killing the woman who harmed him, but at the same that he wasn't able to get himself. Like, when does that begin? Like, when does Sangwoo begins? to reference a Batman film, like, when does that begin? Because we are not shown that. The choices that lead to that would bring more insight into the character. We know that he went to college, and then we know that he went to the army, and then we know he got out of the army, and now he's going to college again, and that's when he encounters Bum, and apparently he's in his mid-20s. And it's been 5 years since the mother was killed. A whole bunch of happened in between then. Like, was he killing people in the army? Like, when was his first kill? Like, when did he decide that he wanted specifically to lure in women? Like, where did that begin? Because it didn't begin, and we didn't see the beginning of it. And, like, you can imply a million things that all generally are the same thing, but I think it would have been nice to see the specifics of that, because it would explain, like, more exploration into the character and his trauma that ultimately motivates him to be how he is. And the other gap that I kind of personally just needed was the gap between Chief Kwok confronting Sangwoo and when we see Sangwoo lounging on the couch and Bum apparently has just been beaten up by him and Chief Kwok has been killed. I would have liked to see how Bum reacted to the situation, because we just had a situation before that where Sangwoo is breaking down, he's chopping up his hair with like a box cutter, and then he tells Bum, if I had never met you. Him saying that is a signification of like the demise of their relationship, but like, what would Bum's reaction have been to him killing Chief Kwok? Because Bum had just seen Sangwoo have like a meltdown in the basement, so like, would Bum have tried to stop him, like, because Bum was speaking up at this point? Would Bum have like objected? How did Bum react to that? Did he say anything to Bum in those moments? And what would have led to him beating Bum again, and what would Bum's mental processes have been at Sangwoo beating him again after so long? You know what I'm saying? Like, I would have liked to see that, because then it just cuts to like, oh yeah, Bum's being beat again. And it's like, because we're now focusing on Yang again, which I have my opinions on, I'll get to. But in doing so, we're robbed of Bum's view of things, I guess. In seeing how Bum goes from happy in this relationship. Bum was at this point of like, I'm gonna give him this ring. And then he starts killing people again. And like, would Bum have said anything to him in that point in time? Because Bum had grown into a person this time, and he was speaking up to Sangwoo when he was unhappy about shit. So like, would Bum have said something would that have caused him to then start getting beat again? So it just feels like a gap in things. Everything else like makes sense coherently, like especially when you go back and reread it, makes even more sense. Terrifyingly so sometimes. Oh, like how much Sangwoo stares at the wall in his bedroom when he's in his bedroom during various scenes, particularly like and they go upstairs and Sangwoo is frantic and they go to hide under the covers and he looks scaredly at the wall and you see him focus on the wall and then he goes back under and then he wakes back up again and looks at the wall again. Or like when they're Bum wants to have sex in his childhood bedroom and he's like, it's a little embarrassing to do it here. Gee, I wonder why, because someone's watching in the wall. And then the last part is just when he's having the mental breakdown after Bum got out of the car and Bum's lying about he came back on the bus and Sangwoo being like, please help me. Blah, blah, blah. And then you see like, there's a shot of that same wall. It's just like eerie. It's eerie as f***. Getting into the characters. So, I don't know why I said it like that. So Yang is basically the only other thing that was like, kind of like, I wouldn't call it a negative. It was just, I just wish the choice was different. I don't have a problem with Yang. I think he's fine as a character. I think he's very boring. I think he's very bland, especially because this is a story that depicts men having sex with men and like, why didn't he get with Detective Lee? You know what I mean? So Yang, I don't really have like a strong opinion on him as a character. I have strong opinions about his backstory being in the story at all, aka I just feel like it shouldn't have been in the story at all. I just don't see the point in having Yang's backstory with his father when there's already so much going on in the story with Sangwoo and Bum. Like, we don't really need to know the cops' deep motivations and get further exploration on it, in my opinion, in the main story. I think it's something that definitely would have fit in a side story, epilogue chapters, which plenty of manhwa do all the time, or its own separate Killing Stalking spinoff, Killing Stalking Copping, I don't know. Killing, stalking, trespassing. Like, I just think Yang's story, like, cuts things up in a story that already cuts things up with its own story that it's telling between its two lead characters. I guess it's supposed to juxtapose, like, him getting closure in the situation, whereas Bum and Sangwoo's stories ultimately end with neither of them getting any closure. All we really needed was, like, a brief explanation of, like, oh, he was a cop who was at this other precinct. He did this thing and he was wrong, and so he got demoted, and that's why he's here. We can, like, highlight things about he gets a little obsessive about things. He gets a little in his head about different thinking people are perpetrators. But the core of the story is the dynamic between Sangwoo and Bum. And so Yang as, like, an opposing factor, someone who is affecting their story, like, we do not need to explore Yang separately as a character as much as we did, in my opinion. Again, I think, like, having that exploration of having like, side chapters at the end where it, like, replays Sang's involvement, but from his standpoint, and then exploring his backstory with his father, and then him getting closure and everything, I think would have been, like, very interesting as a side stories in the end, because, like, it's one happy ending in a story that's about a not happy ending. You know what I mean? So it's like, at least someone got closure in the end. I think that execution would have been more coherently makes sense. Because during my reread, I was skipping whole chapters about Yang's backstory. My father, I'm like, okay, keep going. And again, it's not that I don't like Yang. I like Yang as a character. He was hot, but underutilized in that aspect, which is offensive. But Yang, ultimately, I don't dislike as a character. I just think, like, that part of his story was unnecessary in a story that already had so much going on. I liked Bum. Ultimately, in the beginning, I joke about, like, I keep bringing up, like, Bum trespassed, the enemy is within, like, it's his own fault. He ended up in the situation he was in. And I do believe that. Like, I feel like you can't go into this and be like, no, his mental illness is his excuse. Like, mental illness is not an excuse. Like, having empathy for mental illness and also being like, you still did something f***ed up, or you did something against the law, like, is not, like, you can, these things can, again, a big point of this story is these things can simultaneously exist at the same time. And I feel like people just can't wrap their heads around that. Bum, back to Bum. It always comes back to the Bum. In the beginning, like, Bum has these proclivities because of his poor mental state. And, like, it's very clear that, like, his BPD is also influenced by the shitty living life. I was gonna say living conditions, but it's his entire life that he has lived up until this point where nobody really cares about him. Nobody shows him affection. Nobody shows him genuine support. Nobody tries to understand him, which is why, again, his relationship to Sangwoo is so strong, because it's like he finally has someone who genuinely cares about him. Even though in the beginning it very much is for, like, this mom proxy catharsis simulation, but ultimately, in my opinion, does become, like, a genuine attraction to Bum. And then I would say even on the inverse, like, that's why Sangwoo does become so attracted to Bum ultimately, is because from the beginning they start bonding. And Sangwoo has never bonded with anybody ever before. Like, he's never had, like, a close friends like that. He comes from a f***ed up familial situation. And so even though he's keeping this person alive to, like, fuel his own catharsis, in getting to know Bum, and that they're both orphans, that they're both victims of familial and that they're both victims of physical abuse, and all of that, like, him finding someone who has gone through the exact same things that he's gone through is what ultimately leads to his genuine attraction to Bum as well. And, like, in him having a genuine attraction to Bum allows Bum to grow as a person, because he's like, oh, someone genuinely cares for me. Even though Bum, again, his initial connection to Sangwoo is his own infatuation with him adjacently. It's also interesting that, like, in him growing as a character, like, you see him being able to like break free from Sangwoo temporarily much later in the story. Like, when Sangwoo is having a meltdown is due to the fact not only that Sangwoo has shown him affection, but also that the childhood friend, the f***ed up childhood friend who only hangs out with him when she's going through some shit, she also showed, like, oh, Bum, I need you in this situation. And so Bum feeling needed gives him, like, the confidence he needs in different aspects, like getting the ring, speaking up against Sangwoo, making the decision, at least temporarily, that, like, I don't want to see Sangwoo ever again. But then ultimately, it's hard for Bum to reconcile that fact, particularly after learning that Sangwoo dies, because, like, one line that Bum says that, like, breaks my heart, like, towards the end of the story is, like, when Bum gets out of, because Bum ends up at the wrong hospital, the taxi man is like, get out, da 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 da, and so Bum's like on the side of the street, and Bum is like, why are people like this to me? And that, like, oh my god, like, it makes me emotional, like, oh, Bum! But yeah, Bum, cheeky brat, love to see his evolution, the tragedy of the end. Like, I don't really have much to say about Bum. I love Bum. I'm unintentionally, I guess, a Yoon Bum kinney, since we're both Sagittariuses. So, whatever, I guess that's that. Sangwoo! 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 Overall feelings, how do I feel about Sangwoo? You're screaming, crying, there's not a bone in your body that he can't break. If you're whited, then he'll break your feet. Shout out High School Musical. That Killing Stalking High School Musical crossover. I'm very proud of myself for that. I did that earlier today on Discord. Thank you. Not the greatest singer, but you get the point. Listen, I cannot help it. As I said before, I am but a man. I am weak. Inferior gender. So I cannot help myself. I'm sorry, but he can get it like good credit. I'm not gonna sit up here and justify finding him hot. He's hot. If you have eyes, you can understand that. And yes, he did a lot of up shit. But honestly, getting to the root of why he did the up shit made him even hotter. Like I said, I am a person who feels empathy, feels sympathy for people. I feel sympathy for Bum. I feel empathy for Sangwoo. Not that I've gone through what he's gone through, but I can understand why he is the way he is based off what he did. I wouldn't make those same decisions, but I can understand, like, where he is coming from. I don't really have much else to say other than he's smoking hot. I think the backstory and explanation of his character is so fucking fascinating. I think, like, the complex psychology of his psychosis from, like, the trauma of his mother and how she haunts him is, like, ridiculously up, but, like, also, like, the more you delve into it, the more it's, like, holy the fact that, like, he intentionally intended to keep Bum around because it's like, oh, this is someone who also reminds me of my mother, like all the girls that I've been killing so far. But it's a boy, but I can't deny the fact that he reminds me of my mother. So I'm going to continue to use him as the simulation that I have for these girls. But then in doing so, he also got to know the person that he decided to then immediately link with his mother. And then that ultimately, I feel like, was his downfall because ultimately he started their entire first meeting by connecting Bum to his mother. And then once you connect the person who is associated with your trauma and then you start to fall for that person as who they are, your trauma is forever linked to them because you have decided to make that link or recognize that link very early on, then ultimately, like, the relationship is doomed to fail because unless you really do something tangibly about making that disconnected, you're never going to be truly happy with this person because you're always going to forever associate them with the person who is associated with your trauma. And I would also argue that, like, in an alternate universe where Bum never tried to poison him with the rat poison or Sangwoo just flat out threw the rat poison out after the whole situation with the mother, I feel like this probably would have had a very different ending. I don't think that he wouldn't have abused Bum throughout the course of their relationship, but I also do think that it would have been easier for him to keep the thought of his mother and Bum separate in his mind, I think, if the rat poison circumstance had not happened. Because that is really, like, the root of why their relationship collapsed, because Bum accidentally, coincidentally did the rat poison shit in the beginning. And I don't think Sangwoo intended him to do it, but, like, in Bum doing that, he was like, oh, like, it just drew it closer. And that's a situation where it's not just like, you kind of remind me of my mother, and you can move past that because Bum then is doing accidental, coincidental actions that also remind him of his mother. It just cements it harder in his head, and that ultimately is why he has the mental breakdown he does as the story goes. No matter how much he tries in season 3, after he enters his Junta Azumaya era, he tries so hard to give Bum a haircut so it looks less like his mother's hair, in theory. Has Bum dress in more traditionally masculine clothes, and etc. Like, he does all these things where he tries to really, truly separate Bum from his mother, but then little things like the rat poison and Bum wanting to call him babe and things like that, and Bum then riding him in a certain sexual position at, like, the very lowest that Sangwoo feels in the story is just all coincidences that, like, even when Sangwoo gives control over to Bum to let Bum essentially dictate how the relationship is going to go, where he thought, like, that would allow the relationship to be its own separate thing because it would no longer be, I'm getting into analytical territory, but whatever, dictated by Bum so that he wouldn't be tempted to accidentally, on instinct, include things that would relate to his mother that would make the mother relation even closer. Just the coincidences of just Bum's choices, all of that causes it just to collapse, which is just, it's so beautiful. It's beautiful. It's amazing. What's that line? I have, like, this random masochistic, lewd, gorgeous something absolutely describes the story. Like, ultimately, Sangwoo is just a poor hurt puppy and he happens to bite and we're into it. Also, I feel like people really just hate Sangwoo because they realize he's hot and they don't want to admit he's hot. So they're secret Sangwoo simps. I will say it with my whole flabby chest, the relationship was romantic, and I loved it. And, like, if that means I'm a sicko, then listen, I don't ever want to be healthy, because it just was great. It was great. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was romantic. And some people, I feel like, will, like, throw this shit into the fetishize category, and it's like, I just want to tell you that, like, fetishization of queer men is still representation. Just saying. It's about visibility. We fetishize women in every sort of everything. Hello, the entire identity of like queer women to straight people, particularly homophobic, lesbophobic, and biphobic men is the performance of women being queer. So like, again, it comes back to feminism. It comes back to equality. Like if we're gonna fetishize women, gotta fetishize women with women. We gotta fetishize men with men. This is my personal belief. Like, it's just what it needs to be. Doesn't create an imbalance. It's not homophobic. In fact, to say the inverse is homophobic, in my opinion. But yeah, no, I love the relationship. It was just beautiful to watch it. Maybe not beautiful to watch it begin. It was kind of rough to watch it begin. But as it progressed and like watching it evolve and go through the good and the bad. Oh, now I'm thinking about Sangwoo crying. Oh, my poor baby. And then, then to watch it crumble. Oh, just in my pants. Like, it was just so beautiful. Like, just beautiful top to bottom. I think I said this already in the main video, but Sangwoo, with the fluffy black hair is the hottest look he has. But I digress. I enjoyed Killing Stalking. I will probably reread it again one day. For a second time. But it was beautiful. It was amazing. And something I just want to say, because I've hinted at over the course of this, is that this is not all of my Killing Stalking discussion. Tongue twister, Killing Stalking. If you want to hear more of my thoughts that some thoughts that I thought were too hot for YouTube in the aspect that I thought are just too sensitive to talk about on YouTube, or not even necessarily just that, but topics that I'm like, I don't feel comfortable discussing on the public internet where everybody has access to me. I'm gatekeeping behind my Patreon paywall, so join my Patreon at the OTR with Jean Tour tier, and you will get access to the extended cut of this, which is probably going to be at least 3 hours at this point. It is not only going to contain my extended thoughts from my vlogs on the first read through that you guys saw the abridged version of earlier in this video. I had like basically a whole other hour and a half of that to add on to that, but I also will include everything I talked about yesterday in the 3-hour cut that I initially did for the end of this that y'all didn't get to see. I will be including that as well, and maybe if I cut anything out of this, it will also be in there as well. It might even be multiple parts because it is probably going to be so long. But yeah, so head over to my Patreon if you want to see that, or additionally, if you would like to see me be playing Camp Buddy Scout Master Season, I am playing that currently on Patreon as well. I'm playing it for Patreon and for channel members. If you go and join the Sosbay tier on my Patreon, or you just become a channel member of mine at any tier, you will get access to the Safe for Work version. Safe for Work version is available on both. The NSFW version is available for Devout Christian tier on my Patreon, and it will not be available to channel members because the video site that I host them on is not allowed to be posted on YouTube. So blame YouTube, not me. If you're a channel member, just switch over to the Patreon if you can. I know it's not available to everybody. I wish I had a workaround, but I currently do not. So once I do, I'll maybe figure something out, but that's how it is for now. But that's gonna be everything for this video. I'm not gonna ask what your opinions for Killing Stalking were because it's 2023. It's been 4 years. It's been 7 years of people sharing opinions on Killing Stalking. I think all of it has been said. What I do want to know about is, who do you kin in the story? Are you a Yoon Bum kinny? Are you a Sangwoo hoo? Are you a Yang woohoo? Are you into Detective Lee? Are you, I was gonna say just the uncle and the mother, maybe not. I don't want to know that. Or maybe I do want to know that. But yeah, let me know all of that in the comments below. And also let me know if you like this style of video. Maybe not this length. I don't think anything else I would potentially do with this video format would be this long. Hopefully it wouldn't be because my brain can only take so much. But let me know if you like this video format. And if you like this video format, what other BL or non-BL stories depicting men in relationships with each other you would like to see me do BL blog. We'll work on the marketing. This kind of like BL vlog for. Let me know in the comments below and I will consider them. I think I mentioned it earlier, but let me see if I can get around to Blood Bank and BJ Alex. New year, new me. Reneging on all this like stubborn I've had over the years. But yeah, that's gonna be everything for this video. I will see y'all in the next one. Watch more videos on the screen. I haven't done this shit in like 3 months. I'm like, how the fuck do I end videos? But here we are. That's everything for this. This video's been long enough. Bye.